Good evening. We are starting off with our 11th session. Third week and third session of the third week. Yesterday we left off with the interaction of process groups. I would like to revise a bit as if we can understand that the previous table we have seen right now in front of your screen, you have got it right. So Mohsen, I'll ask certain questions and you will answer me those questions, and that will satisfy me that you have understood everything. First of all, why is it that integration has to be there in every process group? Integration knowledge area has to be there in every process group.
So integration is basically the process which is, you can say, connecting everything. It is responsible for communication of like data, statistics, and other sort of communication which needs to be there to smoothly run the process, because sir, the processes are interdependent. Obviously, things cannot be done on their own. So there has to be integration in between them, so everything runs smoothly.
Okay, very fine.
And like, yeah, I mean, no one is left without any critical information which could be useful for running the processes.
Right. So moreover, integration has a parental role. It looks after all the other processes. It is not only responsible for information and communication, but it is also responsible for everything happening in the project. So in all the process groups, integration process, whatever it is, it has to take the responsibility of everything else happening in that process group. So like in planning, we have got planning going on for scope and time and cost and everything. All these plannings have to be integrated into one project management plan. Similarly, in execution, you may have many other processes working, but they all are subordinate to the direct and managed project work process. Okay, we agree that integration has to be there in every process group. Why is it that it has two processes in monitoring and control, and everywhere else it has only one process?
Sorry, sir?
My question is,
yes,
integration is the parent process and it has to be there in every process group.
Yes, sir.
To control the things. You can see there is only one process in initiation from integration side, one in planning, one in execution, two in monitoring and control, and one in close. Why are there two processes in monitoring and control?
So monitoring and control is the main process group which has to look after everything which is going in a project. So as you mentioned that integration is the process which does the parental control stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the for monitoring and control to oversee and control everything.
Right. But still the question remains there, why are there two separate processes? What is the role of these two processes? Let me explain. Actually,
Okay.
monitoring and control, you have to do two things. First of all, you have to do an in-depth analysis of whatever has happened in execution, whether it has happened according to the plan or in diversification of the plan. Whatever has happened, that has to be analyzed thoroughly. And based on that analysis, we can suggest certain changes to be brought to the project through an authenticated change request process. So all the change requests which are received are to be treated by another process again from integration, and that is perform integrated change control. So monitor and control project work process is responsible for the, the analysis, the whole analysis of the project. And naturally, all other controls like scope control and schedule control and cost control, they all report to this. They also do their analysis, but they report their analysis to monitor and control project work, which consolidates it all and comes up with the whole analysis. Now, based on that analysis, it may come up with some change requests. This is not only this process that comes up with the change request, any other control can also come up with a change request. And if you remember, I told you yesterday that execution also can move a change request. Although we said that execution does not have any permission to make any changes by itself. It has to follow the project management plan as it is. But if there is a change suggested, it can always request that change. Now, people think that that will be a very lengthy process. First, we'll go through execution, then we'll go to monitoring and control, and this will delay the matters. So, I explained yesterday, execution and monitoring and control are not happening in sequence. They are happening simultaneously. So, as soon as a problem arises in execution, a change request can be moved immediately and can be processed immediately by monitoring and control. And the process which processes the change requests is called perform integrated change control. So in my own words, the first process, monitor and control project work, I call it chief analyst, and perform integrated change control, I call it chief controller. So there are two roles here, analyst role and controller role. So analyst is responsible for consolidating all the analysis and coming up with a comprehensive report of the work performance, and perform integrated change control is responsible for processing the change requests no matter from where they have come. Am I clear on that?
Yes, sir, I got it. So basically, one process is just getting the information and compiling it, and the other one is responsible for actually performing the change.
Yes, getting the change request approved. Now, from our practical point of view, we call it all the change requests are received in integrated change control, and integrated change control is responsible to get them approved or rejected, whatever decision is to be made. But generally people think that this decision is with the project manager and this is happening within the project. Well, I don't object to this happening in the project, but this is not the decision of the project manager. Basically, which PMI does not talk about is the project board. Project board might be a body outside of the project of senior executives are the key stakeholders. Actually, all the change requests are actually taken to the project board and they approve or reject the change request. So for all practical purposes, we call it that when it has gone to integrated change control, that has actually gone to the project board and they have the authority to approve a request, change request, or to reject it, or to delay it, or to pend it, or whatever they decide. But from PMBOK side, PMBOK view, we would say that all change requests are processed in integrated change control. Right.
Sir,
Okay.
one more thing.
Yes.
Sir, one thing. Why do we call it integrated change control?
Because it integrates all the changes. From anywhere the change can come. It can come from the execution or any of the controls or even from the stakeholder direct. So it integrates all the changes and also ensures that the change request received amply describes its impact on all other knowledge areas. So it has been properly integrated and consolidated, and only then the change request is approved or rejected. Okay?
Okay, sir. Yes,
Right.
sir.
My next question is, if you look at scope, time and cost, these three knowledge areas, you find a lot of processes in planning and some processes in control, right? So why are there no processes in execution? When you are planning something in so much of detail, why don't you execute it? Why do you only want to control it? How and when it will be executed?
So these are just the definitions or like factors which we have to define. I mean, uh, these are not something. Like for example, if we are going to that's our process. So we need to know what is the like how is it going to be, how much time, how is it to be managed, and the cost. Like it's not something which is really happening in execution. In execution, it would be actually making of the plan. No.
Mm-hmm. No, the point is, I said scope, time and cost are being planned in thorough detail during planning. Each
Yes.
and everything you have to do, each and everything, every activity, every work package, every bit of money you have to spend is described here, is fully described here in scope, time and cost. When the things are so well described and they are to be executed also, why are there no processes in execution? When and how these things will get executed? That was the question.
Uh, no.
Okay. If you remember, yesterday we talked about that everything which happens in planning is subordinate to integration. Develop project management plan is responsible to consolidate the whole plan, integrate the whole plan. Especially scope, time and cost are integrated into the project management plan completely, and they are executed as a whole in execution by the integration process, direct and manage project work. This process, direct and manage project work. This is responsible for actually executing the scope and time and cost. That is the reason why we don't have separate execution of scope, separate execution of schedule, or special separate execution of cost. When the project will be done according to the schedule, naturally the scope will be met, the activities will be done, time will be spent, and the cost will also be spent. So this is being integratedly executed in direct and managed project work. That is why they are not required to be separately executed. Is it okay?
Okay, sir. That's the main process which is responsible for doing everything. We don't have to like
Yes.
micro execute them.
Project management plan is the integrated version of everything. Now, let me introduce another concept to you, and that is, you might have heard about the triple constraint. Have you?
Not really, no.
Okay. Many people call scope, time, and cost as triple constraints. Although this term,
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I remember. Yes, I remember.
right? Although this term is no more valid, this is no more valid. Scope, time, and cost are not the triple constraints. The term triple constraint has been rubbed off the dictionary. It is no more. Because we understand now that there could be more than three constraints. In addition to scope, time, and cost, we have got quality, which could be a constraint, which we have got risk, which could be a constraint, we have got resources, which could be a constraint, and there could be lot many other things. Therefore, just indicating three knowledge areas as constraint is not valid anymore. But on the other hand, PMI has come up with a recent concept, and that is A project can only be defined in terms of scope, time, and cost. We don't call them triple constraint now. We say the objectives of a project can only be defined in respect of scope, time, and cost. That means these three things are now called project objectives. Meaning what? That our project's objectives cannot be defined without scope, time, or cost. Like, how can we define a project? I have to construct a house. If you say project is construct a house, so this is very ambiguous. What kind of a house do you want? How many rooms should it have? So I don't want your full requirements, but I should know that this is a 3-bedroom house. This is a single story house. So you say single story 3-bedroom house. This is the scope of the project. To be completed in next 9 months within a budget of this much money. So if I explain the objective of my project in terms of scope, time, and cost, that becomes clear, and that is valid objective. Therefore, if you understand that, therefore scope, time, and cost are now called project objectives, not triple constraints. Fine?
Yes, sir. It's more logical to like define them as objectives rather than
Exactly.
constraint. Yes.
Another thing, another concept I want you to know. Welcome, Dijo. Welcome home. So you are here today. All right, Dijo, is your mic on? Okay. So if you can write in chat, if you are unable to speak, you can write in chat. If you like, we can repeat some of the matter we have discussed so far. Okay, let me continue then. Right. So this was one other question. So one thing more. Can you explain to me what is a project management plan, or for that matter, forget about the project management plan. What is the difference between a management plan and a plan?
Sir, plan is a simple, how can I say, something that you decide how to do something. Like if you're going to do something, you will define all the things in related to that objective, and you define how to do it. And management plan means how you will manage all those things.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is exactly the right answer. So everything, anything you are creating a plan for, before you can start creating a detailed plan, you must lay out certain rules, methods, laws, procedures. Something must be laid out. And you already have a governance structure. You already have a project governance structure. So remaining within that governance structure, you can define the restrictions for the project, for that specific plan. I am not talking about any one plan. I am talking about any plan. Scope plan, it could be the plan for scope or time or cost or even the whole project management plan. Every plan has to be first provided with a management plan. So you see, in integration, we have a project management plan. In scope, we have a scope management plan. In schedule, we have a schedule management plan, and so on and so forth. Every plan every knowledge area has at least one management plan. That is for sure. So we will have a management plan for everything. And that management plan will describe what is this plan about, who is responsible for this plan, what are the rules for this plan, how this plan can be changed, who will approve it, and things to that context. So if somebody thinks that management plan is the detailed plan, that is wrong. For example, when we are developing the schedule management plan, at the time we are developing the schedule management plan, we are just laying out the rules for the schedule management. We do not know which are the activities because we have yet not identified the activities, but it will consist instructions about how to define activities, how to identify activities, how to sequence them, how to estimate them, and ultimately how to develop a Gantt chart. So all those instructions will be encapsulated in the management plan. Similarly, for scope and time and cost and everything else, everything must have a management plan. That much is okay?
Yes, sir. Yes.
If you have a management plan, it is kind of an instruction manual, then it is very easy for you to go through the remaining processes of that knowledge area. Because all instructions are there, you know what are your boundaries and how you can do it. So as per the instructions, you will start defining the activities, sequencing the activities, and so on and so forth. Okay, once you are done with the detailed planning, first you created the management plan, then you did the detailed planning. Once you are done with the detailed planning, there is another thing which is very important, and that is to freeze your plan. Because if you don't do that, the plan will keep changing all the time and you would not know which version to implement. Therefore, you must put your foot down at some stage and say, this is the final version of my plan and this is what I am going to execute. So this is the frozen version, or we can call it a baseline version. So when scope is finalized, we come up with a scope baseline. When schedule is baseline, we come up with a schedule baseline. And similarly, when the cost is baseline, we come up with the cost baseline. And there could be baselines for quality and other knowledge areas as well, but why don't we have them? Reason being, everything else which happens in a project, like communication, like procurement, like everything else, they are actually, if there is a change in any one of them, would actually be impacting either one of these three objectives: scope, time, or cost. So if I can somehow control the baselines of these three items, I can control the whole project. So the three project objectives, scope, time, and cost, will have to be baseline, and these baselines must form part of the project management plan, and that project management plan, when executed, will automatically be an integrated execution which would contain everything included in scope, detailed plan of scope, schedule, or cost. That is exactly one of the reasons why we are not having scope, time, and cost in execution. Am I clear about that?
Sir, can you please repeat the last part? Like,
Did you understand till the baseline? Why do we?
no, sir.
Okay,
No, sir. One.
okay. Okay. First, you created a management plan for a knowledge area. Then, according to that management plan, you went through the remaining processes given in there. Like if I am talking about the scope management plan, you collect requirement, you define scope, you create WBS, you do all these things exactly according to the instructions you have provided in the scope management plan. Once you have done all this, then you would have a final version of the plan, the implementable version of the plan. But as you wait and see, lot many changes keep coming, maybe from stakeholder, maybe other sources, and the final plan is always on the change. If you take the responsibility as a project manager of bringing all the changes, then your plan will never be frozen. So you present this plan in front of your boss, your sponsor, and tell him this is what has been final, I think is the final version which we should implement, and you should approve it. When the sponsor approves a detailed plan, that means he has baselined the plan. Now, project manager does not have any authority to bring any changes to this baseline without the permission of the sponsor. So, as you discussed with about the change control, if there is a change control, if there is a change request, it will go through the proper change control mechanism, and after getting approved by the project sponsor and the project board, that would actually allow the change to happen into the baseline. So the baseline will change, new rebaselining will be done, and accordingly the project management plan will be amended. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
If there is anything confusing, I can explain it again.
Sir, just the baseline, like.
Okay. For any plan, the final version of the plan, which you have done everything, whatever are the steps in planning, you have done all those steps. Once the last step is completed, that means your detailed plan is complete. That is the point where you should declare it a baseline. And to declare it a baseline, you have to present it to your boss and get it approved from him. Because if he approves it, then he is the authority who agrees with this plan and who takes the responsibility of any future change. As a project manager, you do not have any authority to change anything in this baseline anymore until and unless there is an approval on a change request by the project sponsor. Then you will be allowed to change the baseline.
Okay, so that means the final plan,
Final version of that specific knowledge area plan.
that knowledge area plan is a baseline. Okay, sir.
So I also said that there could be as many baselines as there are knowledge areas, but it is not important to have baseline for every plan. Why? Because with the exception of these three project objectives, scope, time and cost, all other knowledge areas are dependent on these three things. Or you can say they impact these three things: scope, time and cost. If you see, if there is a risk, and due to identification of the risk we have to take certain measures, those measures may have to be included into the scope. Time has to be adjusted accordingly, or cost has to be increased. Similarly, if you want to, okay, I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, it's back.
Okay, but no, my tempo is broken. So I was saying there could be as many baselines as there are knowledge areas, but all knowledge areas may not have a baseline. Why? Because all other knowledge areas, except with the exception of scope, time and cost, whatever happens to them, they impact either scope or time or cost. They do not have any impact on themselves as such. If you see human resources increased or decreased, that would affect my cost, that would affect my time, that may affect my scope. So you see, procurement, you take procurements, you take any other knowledge area, stakeholders, communication, whatever the other knowledge area is, that knowledge area is going to ultimately impact any of these three things. So if somehow I can integrate everything and maintain these three baselines, scope baseline, schedule baseline, and the cost baseline, then I can control the project very effectively. But before baselining any of these three things, I have to be very careful as to see all the impacts from other knowledge areas have been considered. Only then I will take this final plan in front of the boss for baselining. Okay, fine.
Yes, yes, sir. But sir, like how we would consider the interdependency of like, I mean, for example, how would a baseline of like scope could be affected by the baseline of project time? Like, I mean, as
Okay,
you said, like it shouldn't be like affected.
okay. Normally scope is the first thing which happens. So time is greatly dependent on the scope. First you must have a scope, then you start planning the time or cost, right? So if there is a change in scope in the meanwhile while you are planning, naturally it will impact the schedule and cost. Or when you are planning your schedule or cost, maybe at that stage you may realize that the scope given cannot be fulfilled and may have to be amended. Although this is going to be very rare, but it can happen that due to certain limitations of schedule and cost, you may even have to sometimes bring changes to your scope. So whenever something is to be baseline, we have to consider everything else. All other knowledge areas have to be considered. And basically this is the responsibility of integration to ensure that every baseline is formed only and only after it has considered all the impacts of other knowledge areas, not only the scope, time and cost, but other knowledge areas as well, like human resource, communication, stakeholder, procurement, human resource, everything. Right.
Okay, sir. Okay.
The point which I wanted to make was that although there could be many baselines, but we are only concerned with three baselines. We do not consider any other baselines. We have the scope baseline, we have the schedule baseline, and we have the cost baseline. Actually, these three baselines put together are enough for execution of the project. Now, as far as the other knowledge areas are concerned, our project management plan will also include the management plans of all the respective knowledge areas. So project management plan from scope will get the scope management plan, and there is yet another management plan in scope which is called requirements management plan. So two management plans are coming from scope. From time it gets the schedule management plan. From cost it gets the cost management plan. I think the slide is not moving as I am moving.
Yeah, sir. It's stuck on the first.
Why is it not appearing?
I can.
Can you see that? The larger version?
No, sir. I only see from 4 till 7.
Same slide? Just hold on a minute. Let me fix it. Okay, are the slides moving?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, number one thing I discussed with you was the presence of processes in all process groups, integration processes in all process groups. Number two, I talked about why there are two processes in monitoring and control. Then I talked about why scope, time and cost do not have anything in execution. Then I talked about there is a management plan for every plan. So all the 10 knowledge areas will have at least one management plan. And then I said there are three baselines because there are three project objectives: scope, time and cost. So scope baseline and time, schedule baseline and cost baseline are the three baselines we have to manage. And if these three baselines are prepared, are complete, then based on them, I can execute the project. So project management plan will include these three baselines plus all the management plans. And what are all the management plans? We in project management plan we will have from scope side scope management plan, and there is yet another plan here which is called the requirements management plan, which I'll talk later. So there are two management plans from scope management plan and requirements management plan. From time it has schedule management plan. From cost it has cost management plan. Then from quality, it has the quality management plan, and there is another management plan in quality. There are two, which is not called a management plan. It is called a process improvement plan. So we have two things here: quality management plan and process improvement plan. Then we have human resource management plan, communication management plan, risk management plan, procurement management plan, and stakeholder management plan. So simply put, every knowledge area has at least one management plan, and that management plan is exactly according to the name of that knowledge area, except for two. Scope has one additional management plan. In addition to scope management plan, they have a requirements management plan. Quality has an additional management plan. One is the quality management plan, the other is called the process improvement plan. So leaving aside integration, all the rest of the 9 knowledge areas have got how many management plans?
Sir,
9 knowledge areas,
9?
every knowledge area will have one, right? So 9
Yes,
management
sir.
plans. Plus
Yes,
two
sir.
knowledge areas have 2. So 9 plus 2, there are 11 management plans and 3 baselines. This is the minimum ingredient of a project management plan. Project management plan is composed of at least 11 management plans and 3 baselines. If somebody asks you name those management plans, you can always name them. If somebody asks you, tell me what are the baselines, you know what are the baselines.
So the baselines are only for scope, time, and cost.
Exactly.
But
Exactly. But the
but the
management plan is
management
for
plans are
every knowledge area.
Every knowledge area. Okay, sir.
Yes. So this is okay, right? So you will naturally learn in the process that basically when we establish the scope baseline and schedule baseline and cost baseline, all other knowledge areas are also doing their work. They are also being planned and their impact is being absorbed by the scope, time and cost. So when these three baselines are prepared, that means everything else has been done. Everything else has been integrated into these baselines. And all three of them get integrated into the project management plan, and the other management plans also get into the project management plan. So project management plan is the whole. This consists of everything. Now we did talk about a management plan and a baseline. The baseline only is the final version of the detailed plan, the final shape of the detailed plan. If I look at schedule, while I was planning, doing the processes, going through the processes of planning of schedule, I identified the activities, I sequenced them, I did a lot of work. But the final shape which we came up with was a Gantt chart or a bar chart of the project. That was baseline. In between whatever documents we created, they were not baseline. Only the final version was baseline. Where do all these documents go? So many documents we are talking about. We are talking about activity list, milestone list, network diagram, resource estimates, cost estimates, duration estimates. Where do all these things go? They do not go into the baseline. Where do these things go?
Uh, Sir, direct and manage the project? No?
No. Actually, we will create an archive for all these interim documents, because these interim documents helps us reach the final version. That final version we have baseline, and that is what we are implementing. But those interim documents must be stored securely somewhere, and that archive is called project documents. So anything between the management plan and the baseline, whatever is created in addition to that or in between these two steps, goes directly into project documents.
Sir, project documents are different from the library.
What is library?
So you said templates
No,
of,
templates. Template is different. Template was given to you by the project governance or project management system. If you have to create a charter, what will be the template of the charter was advised to you by governance, or for that matter by the project management system, which was created by PMO. But within my project management plan will tell me exactly what format to use. Now you have filled that format. You have created that document. It is no more a template. It is a filled document. So you have populated our activity list, you have populated a milestone list, you have populated a network diagram. All these things you are doing, they are subsequently resulting in further outputs, and ultimately you came up with a final output which was the Gantt chart. That final output, if approved, they will become the baseline. But what about the interim documents which led us to that baseline? Those are not the baseline. They are not included in the baseline, but they have to be secured somewhere. So the place where we secure them is called the project documents, right?
okay, sir.
That
Okay.
means
Okay.
during planning of all knowledge areas, there will be created some project documents and will be populated there. But the final baselines and the basic management plans of each knowledge area will form part of the project management plan. So from planning, there are two main things coming out. One is the project management plan and the other is the project documents. Project documents are being put into an archive which can be referred to during execution and monitoring and control. But the project management plan, which includes all the 11 management plans and the 3 baselines, is responsible for the execution. This is exactly how the project will be executed. Direct and manage project work process, which is an integration process in execution, will actually comply with the project management plan. Therefore, as we said many times earlier, scope, time and cost will be integratedly executed and not separately executed. Got that much?
But sir, one more thing, like everything is going to be like baseline is when once you define all these things and it goes to the project like development project management plan. So these things shouldn't be the part of that document.
Okay. You see, what do you need in project management plan? Project management plan is an overall instruction to how to do the project. Agreed? Project
Yes,
management plan is
yes.
an overall instruction to how to do the project, right? So how to do things about scope? This is the scope management plan. Again, it goes into the project management plan. Schedule management goes into the project management plan. All the management plans goes into the project management plan. So all the instructions have been contained. Now what to do? What to do are the baselines. There are 3 baselines which are properly integrated with all other knowledge areas. Scope baseline, schedule baseline and cost baseline. These are the 3 things which will actually get executed by integration in execution. Not separately, but integratedly. Now your question, why the baseline should go to project management plan? Because project document is an archive that has no power of doing something. That is just container of the documents. Project management plan has the authority to do things. So the baselines, which are the final version which have to be implemented and executed, goes to the project management plan and it is executed through direct and managed project work. So it must have the baselines to execute. Hope I'm not confused.
One, sir, okay, that's fine. We can say because the overall project management plan, like every management plan, the project management plan of the whole project. One thing you that in executing those in execution, how the integration is going to execute these things.
Because when we created the scope baseline and schedule baseline and cost baseline, basically integration was helping me get all other knowledge areas impacts absorbed into these baselines. If there was a change in risk, if there was a change, if there was a risk, if there was a quality issue, whatever was being during the planning, if anything comes up from any knowledge area, its impact on scope, time or cost would be absorbed here. And these baselines are the final shape which has to be achieved. You see, you take it like this, that you have set up a basic model for doing something, and there are a lot many factors which are, forcing you to add things or subtract things from that basic model. You keep accepting those things as long as that remains within the overall scope of the project. And once you think that all the impacts have been created and there is no more to be added in scope or time or cost, then you decide to get it frozen and you get it baselined by the boss. Now these baselines are the true picture of what should happen exactly during execution. These are actually the steps, which activity to be done first, and then how much scope it will cover, how much money it will spend. So all these details are there in our schedule. So because the responsibility of getting this thing executed, the whole project executed, is with developed project management plan, therefore these baselines will form part of that. Ji Asad, you are here. Anything you want to contribute? Okay. So should we move ahead, Mohsin?
Yes, sir. You can move ahead. I am a bit lost here, but I need to uh, review all these things. Then I can maybe.
Okay. Just remember the basic things. If you are still, struggling with the idea, we will, bridge this gap ultimately. But just the lesson which has to be learned here is there will be at least one management plan for every knowledge area, and we counted 11, right? There could be more. There could be a change management plan, there could be a configuration management plan, there could be many other plans, but the bare minimum requirement is these 11 management plans and 3 baselines. Now, everything else which was created during the planning, no matter it was scope, time, cost, or procurement or communication or whatever, everything else which is not included in the management plan and which is not included in any of these 3 baselines will go to project documents. Everything else goes to project documents. Now, if that point is understood, then let me talk a little about the controls. In monitoring and control, we need to control everything. Every knowledge area has to, we have to exercise some kind of control which will ensure us that the things are happening as they should have happened. So there is one planned picture and there is one on-ground picture. So every knowledge area will look at it from its own perspective. Scope will look at it from the scope perspective. It will check what was the scope to be completed by this time and how much scope has been completed. What is the difference? So that difference is the variance. How much this difference impacts the overall project? Is the impact considerable, noticeable? Do we need to fix it? And if we need to fix it, how do we fix it? And if there is a need to fix it, then we can come up with a change request. So control scope will go through all this process. Similarly, control schedule will look at it from the schedule perspective. How many activities have to be done? How many activities has been done? What is the difference? What is the impact? Is there any change required? And then it can request a change. Cost will do the same. Quality will do the same. Human resource does not have any process. This is the only knowledge area which does not have any process in monitoring and control. And I told you yesterday that is because everything to do with human beings, our resources, is done in execution. You acquire the people for the team, you develop and train them, and you put them on job and manage them. Once you manage them, there you deal with them. You don't deal with them in monitoring and control. The monitoring and control can help you. Due to these change requests and all that and change of planning and progress reports which has been received, it can send you a work performance report in execution, according to which you can view who is responsible for what. And you can reward your people, you can punish your people or whatever you want to. The treatment with the people is not the job of monitoring and control. This is the job of execution. The person who is managing the people, managing the team, would actually take steps, write their reports, pay them salaries or rewards or whatever. So that is exactly the reason why there is no control of human resource here. Rest everything has control. Communication has to be controlled. How much communication had to be done, how much communication has been done, how much less was done, and why. What is the impact on the project? If there is a change required, then there is a change request moved. Similarly, once we come over to risk, risk has a peculiar habit. Risk is an uncertainty which is, we're not sure it will happen. So what we do in execution, we only do those things which we are sure they will happen. Those things we are not sure we can't do. Therefore, we will keep a watch in monitoring and control on all the identified risks, and as soon as we realize that a risk is about to happen, we will invoke the risk response plan we have created during planning. And in accordance to that, we will control the risk, and we can at this stage also identify new risks and create new risk plans. So this is a continuous process. Procurement, naturally we have outsourced some work to our contractor. Now we are just managing that contractor according to the terms of the contract. So in control procurements, we audit the contractor work, we give him approvals, we give him permission to be paid, we accept his claims, we check his deliverables, we do all those things in procurement, and whatever is not in line with the contract, that could be could be leading us to a change request. Anything in the subcontract which is not being followed properly and which can impact the whole project would be suggested as a change request from procurement. Just like communication, in stakeholder engagement, we control the stakeholder engagement. We see how we planned to engage the stakeholders and how actually we have engaged them, and what is the difference, what else we can do to improve the situation. So this could also be a change request. So everything in monitoring and control could result in a change request. While we understand that some of the items in execution can also result in a change request. Now, monitoring and control not only, it looks at two things. First of all, it looks at the deliverable which is received. Secondly, it looks at the work which has been performed. You see, the processes are the work which had been performed during the execution. This is the post analysis, how well that work has been done. So every control is doing what? This is from its own perspective, it is trying to see how well it has been done and what was to be done. So they compare it and do the analysis. But as far as the processes are to be checked while they are being done, ongoing processes, the audit of ongoing processes is concerned, that is not the subject of monitoring and control. Can you tell me where do we have a look at the ongoing processes? When the processes are happening, Do we check them?
Sir, like, what do you mean in direct and manage the project or somewhere else?
No. Do you remember we talked about quality assurance yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Quality assurance is
But
responsible for all the processes which are happening while they are happening. Ongoing, the ongoing processes are only audited by quality assurance. No one else can touch them. It can improve them. That's why quality had a quality management plan and a process improvement plan. A quality management plan and a process improvement plan. Process improvement plan causes the continuous improvement cycle go on. So the ongoing processes can only be touched by, audited by the quality assurance. But once the processes are done, they cannot be undone. Once they are done, we do the post-mortem in monitoring and control. All the controls here, control scope, control schedule, control cost, and so on and so forth, these controls are actually looking at the processes and the work which has happened. None of them is looking at that deliverable. Out of the 11 processes in monitoring and control, only 2 processes are responsible to look at the deliverable. One is validate scope and the other is control quality. Because quality control is something to do with the deliverable. It checks the deliverable. As soon as a deliverable is received from execution, the very first process which checks it, inspects it, is quality control. If it does not come up to the standard of quality control, that item is rejected. And if it passes, we call it a verified deliverable. The deliverable came to us from execution in monitoring and control. The first thing which inspects it is quality control. If it passes it, then it becomes a verified deliverable. That verified deliverable then goes to validate scope. Validate scope is the process where the user acceptance is done. This is again an inspection which ensures that the product is exactly according to what the customer wants. And if user acceptance is passed, then the deliverable is now called validated deliverable or accepted deliverable. And from there, a deliverable goes on to closing process group, from where it will be handed over to the customer. So I have told you the story of deliverable, of the deliverable coming from execution, going into quality control, coming out as a verified deliverable, going to validate scope, coming out as an accepted deliverable, and then being handed over to customer through closing process. Monitoring and control does not hand over the product directly to the customer. It hands over to the closing and closing process. After ensuring that everything has been done and nothing is outstanding, it hands over the deliverable to the customer. Remaining all, there were 11 processes in monitoring and control. Only 2 processes are dealing the deliverable. Remaining 9 processes, including the integration processes, all the 9 processes are dealing with the work, the process, post-mortem of the process. So they all are responsible for post-mortem of the process. And they all create change requests. And all the change requests are received by integrated change control, which is responsible for accepting or rejecting them. Right. Are we fine with it?
Yes, sir. Today it's a bit confusing. The only thing in monitoring and control, it's not like my understanding was that it's overlooking everything.
Yes, it is. What is everything
Even
about a project? What is everything about a project?
no, but sir,
Everything,
you said
everything
the
is
product.
deliverables or the work. What else?
No, I mean that's true.
Okay.
As you said, obviously it's a part. Quality control is a part of monitoring and control.
Okay.
That's fine.
When you
That's what.
define, okay, when you define the scope of a project, you define the product scope and the project scope. Product scope is what is to be produced and what are going to be its characteristics or requirements. Project scope is what is to be done to produce that deliverable. So from the product scope, we get the deliverable. From the project scope, we get all the work in scope. These are the only two things which will be monitored and controlled by all the knowledge areas. Every knowledge area will actually be focusing on these two things. Now, as far as the deliverable is concerned, we said this is the matter of inspection. And inspections can be done only first in quality control and then later in scope validation. Remaining other processes, all other processes in monitoring and control are dealing with the work, post-mortem of the work. So this is everything in the project. If there is any confusion, you must remove it and you must ask for it. But there is nothing left after you have dealt with the whole scope. Product scope and project scope. This is the whole scope. You have done it. So nothing else is required.
Yeah, okay, sir, that makes sense. Yes, from the product point of view and the project.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to this diagram which we started yesterday. I actually wanted that some basic concepts must be clear before we can start talking about this. Although we did start talking about this yesterday, but I will start from the beginning. As I explained yesterday, uh, are you able to see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As I explained yesterday, the gray boxes are the process groups. Initiating process group, planning process group, executing process group, monitoring and controlling the long box, monitoring and controlling process group, and the closing process group. Now, the processes included in them are not shown here. We are now just going to establish the linkage with of these process groups and see what travels from where to where. There are, this is the project document which I was saying is the document archive. When from planning, we create either the project management plan or the project documents. All the project documents are placed here and project management plan goes to execution, to monitoring and control, and to closing. To execution, why? Because project management plan has to be executed there. Monitoring and control, because it has to be checked according to the project management plan. What has happened? So analysis has to be done here. And closing, because it has to do the final review according to the project management plan. So project management plan goes everywhere else. Execution, all the process of execution, all the process of monitoring and control, and all the process of closing will get the project management plan. And project documents can be consulted by execution and updated, can be consulted by monitoring and control and updated. And updation, we will describe later how we update a project document. Going back, we have got some other boxes, the external boxes. We have the project initiator or sponsor who is bringing the project in. Then is the organization, which is giving us the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. Then the customer, who is giving us the requirements. Then between the organization and customer, there might be some teaming agreements, some joint application development kind of thing. If there is such a scenario where our organization and the customer will work together, I should know about it in planning. So teaming agreements must be provided in planning to me. And seller is my subcontractor. I will hire the subcontractor. I will award him the contract after he has given me the bid proposal. So coming back to the sponsor when allocated this project must have been already found feasible. It must have had a scope statement of work. It must have been awarded to us through an agreement or a contract. So these three documents he will be carrying along with him when he gets into the initiation. When he gets into the initiation, he is the only person who is in the project. There is no one else in the project so far. He will assign the project manager and he will write the project charter and he will give that project charter to the project manager, and that project charter will authorize the project manager to mobilize resources for the project. So I will like to ask you, I explained to you yesterday, what is a statement of work, project statement of work, and when it is created?
Sir, that's the request from the customer, like about the project, like what is their requirement, what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they give to the project sponsor. Then he converts that to uh, project.
You're right, but you should not call it a request, because even before he requests for the proposals, RFP, even before those procurement documents are created, the very first thing he creates is a project statement of work. And that is created when the customer feels that this job he cannot do himself and he has to outsource it. So based on this decision, based on this statement of work, he will create the relevant procurement documents, which could be RFP, RFQ, EOI, expression of interest, or anything else. But once he requests, then we bid for that. And once we bid for that, before we bid for that, we must create our own business case. And once we bid for that, we get into negotiations and maybe we are awarded the contract. And once we are in contract, this agreement comes into being. So all the three things have already happened, and they are the three documents project sponsor is carrying in to write his charter. So he will take help of these three documents, as well as he will also take help from the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. Got it? So what are the 5 inputs going into initiation? 3 inputs are coming with the sponsor and 2 inputs are coming from the organization. There are 5 inputs: project statement of work, business case, agreements, organizational process assets, and enterprise environmental factors. These are the things which will be required to create the charter. So project sponsor will create the charter. He will assign the project manager and give this charter to him. As I said yesterday, it might be possible that he has already someone in mind for the position of project manager, or he might be seeking help from someone for creation of the project charter, and that someone may ultimately become the project manager. But remember, writing the project charter is not project manager's responsibility. He might assist the project sponsor in writing it, but this is not his duty, and he is not a signatory author of project charter. Project charter is an authorization by the project sponsor to the project manager. That means this is an order given by the project sponsor to the project manager. How can you write order for yourself? You can assist in writing that, but you can't be the author of that document. Yes, you can be the receiver of that document. Once the project manager receives that charter, he looks around. The first thing he needs to note is who all are the stakeholders which I would have to deal with. So identify stakeholder is another process in initiation which project manager must do. He should not start planning at this stage. He should just earmark all the sponsors, analyze them, group them into some order of priority, and devise a stakeholder management strategy. So he will create a stakeholder register or a list of stakeholders and his strategy to deal with different kinds of stakeholders. So from initiation to planning, we get the charter, we get the stakeholder register, we get the stakeholder management strategy. From organization, we are getting the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. We are also getting requirements from the customer in planning. We are also getting the teaming agreements in planning. And on top of everything else, we also may get the resource calendars. What is a resource calendar? So far, I don't know what are my resources, but whatever resources will be used in this project, what is the calendar of availability of those resources? On what dates, at what times, and what hours those resources will be available? This might not be very clear in planning, so we may assume a lot many things here. But in execution, when we will actually be hiring and procuring those resources, we will get to know about the exact resource calendar, and that, when known, would amend the project management plan in planning. As you know, execution can mend planning throughout the life cycle. So execution, monitoring and control, and planning, these three things are happening in a cycle. Okay, are we clear about all the inputs to the planning process group?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me revise. We have the charter coming to it from the top arrow. We have stakeholder register and management strategy coming from initiation. We have organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors coming from the organization. We have teaming agreements coming from organization and customer jointly. We have requirements coming from customer, and we have resource calendars which may be coming either from initiation or execution. Mostly from execution. So if we don't have any resource calendars right now, in our first go, then we will assume the resource calendars. Now let's see what is going out of planning. Number one, all the project documents are being put into this archive. Arrow going down from planning process groups to project documents. These are the project documents, and what are these documents? With the exception of the baselines and the management plans, everything else is a project document. So everything else which is created during planning, it goes to project documents. And remaining project management plan includes what? All the management plans and all the baselines. So we counted minimum of 11 management plans and 3 baselines which are to be ingredients of project management plan. So the project management plan goes out of it, and this project management plan is to be distributed to all processes of execution, to all processes of monitoring and control, and to all processes of closing. So you don't need to remember exactly which processes get the project management plan. Every process subsequently will get the project management plan as an input. So there is not a big deal about it. So as far as the project documents and project management plan is concerned, we are really sure where they are going. Now there are certain other arrows coming out of planning process group, and there are actually only two more. One is going straight down to execution, and on it is written make or buy decision and source selection criteria. Now what is this? When everything has been included in project management plan, why are these things going to execution? They either should be in project management plan or they should be in project document. What is this? So let me explain. In your project, there is a knowledge area by the name of procurement. Procurement management deals with all the work which you want to outsource out of your project. There are certain things you don't want to do yourself or you can't do yourself, so you hire someone else to do them. So make or buy decision is which are those jobs which you don't want to do yourself and you have decided to buy that. Means you don't want to make, you want to buy. So you want that simply means that you have decided certain jobs to be outsourced. So those decisions along with those all those items which you decided to outsource, how would you select the contractors for that? That is the source selection criteria. And naturally, you will develop some procurement documents like RFPs, RFIs, RFQs, EOIs, and so on and so forth. Those documents, once you create, although they form part of the project documents, but they will be sent back to initiation. Project documents are being sent back to initiation. Why? Because when we identified the stakeholders there, at that time, we did not know the procurement documents would exist. And these procurement documents might put a spotlight on certain other stakeholders who could be our subcontractors. So we have to identify a list of qualified resellers, qualified sellers. So we are buyer of that service which a contractor is going to give us. So he is the seller. So in light of the RFP and RFQ and all that, I am trying to identify more stakeholders who might be my subcontractors or prospective subcontractors. So does it make any sense? These two arrows which are due to the procurement knowledge area, downwards to the execution it is sending the make or buy decision and source selection criteria, and upwards to initiation it is sending the procurement document for identification of more stakeholders. Does it make sense? Yes, sir.
Last part.
Okay. Asad, is what you, was it you who was speaking? Okay. I don't know what is the problem with your net. Do you can you hear me all right? Because I can't hear anything what you say. It's broken altogether. Okay. Okay. Okay, my voice should be very clear because I have to speak most of the time. Anyways, Jimosan, is it okay with you? Okay, right. Now we have reached execution. Now let us see what are the inputs here. We get the project management plan. We can get the project documents from the archive. We get the make or buy decision and the source selection criteria. We get the resource calendar. We get the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. What else? We get the bidder proposals. When we will float the request for proposal, the bidder proposal will be received. And then we will be able to award the contract to the selected contractor. Okay. There is one other arrow coming in from monitoring and control, but I can't define it until and unless I have defined the arrow going from execution to monitoring and control. So if the overall execution of the project is done or being done, what is sent from execution to monitoring and control? If you remember, I just discussed, basically we have to fulfill two things, product scope and the project scope. So from the product scope perspective, we will send the deliverables which are created. They are sent for inspection to monitoring and control. Then we have got work performance data. Whatever is happening here in execution, a complete report of everything happening is called work performance data. Here in the diagram, it is written work performance information, which is wrong. It should be work performance data. Then you understand we can also move some change request from execution. If something is not going according to the plan and we naturally we can't change anything by ourselves. Execution has no authority to bring any changes, but it can always request a change and monitoring and control will deal with the change. And it is not bureaucratic. Basically, execution and monitoring and control are happening simultaneously, and this decision could come spontaneously and immediately. So if it is a mature organization, if your systems are efficient, then as soon as you move the change request, you can even get the approval of that. So the change requests are sent to monitoring and control. Moreover, we have selected the contractor. So the selected sellers along with the contracts we have signed with them are also sent to monitoring and control. As far as we are concerned, from the subcontract point of view, we do not have to do the subcontract. Contractor has to do it. In our execution, it is enough for us that we have awarded the contract to a contractor. That's it. Our execution of that job is done. Now he will do the job and we will check him. So we will monitor and control him. So these are the four things that deliverable, change request, work performance data, and the selected sellers which has gone to monitoring and control from execution. Now what does execution do? Execution will pick up the deliverable, inspect it through quality control. If passed, it will become a verified deliverable. It will go for user acceptance to validate scope process. If passed, it will become accepted deliverable and will be handed over to close project for onwards handing over towards the customer. That's it. As far as the work is concerned, work performance data, this work performance data has to be analyzed by each and every control existing in monitoring and control. Scope control, schedule control, cost control, every control. all the controls, procurement and risk control, every control will get the work performance data. If you remember, we said project management plan is also available as input to all these controls. So it will compare the work performance data with the project management plan and see what had to be done, what has been done, and does the analysis. And ultimately, after this analysis is done, it may move a change request if something is not in order and needs to be fixed in the project management plan. So it can move, every control has authority to move the change request. Moreover, the work performance data it has analyzed, after the analysis has been done, the results of that analysis would be called work performance information. So every control, after it has analyzed that data, converts it into work performance information. So if there are 11 processes here, each one of those processes would be outputting work performance information. Now where does this work performance information go? This work performance information will go to the chief analyst. And what was that chief analyst? That was the integration process. We have two integration processes here. The first integration process was monitor and control project work. That I called the chief analyst. So monitor and control project work will receive all the change work performance information. All the work performance information. So all the analysis results are received by him. So what does it do? It consolidates them, further analyzes them, and consolidates them into a report, a consolidated report of the whole project. That is called work performance report. Work performance report. So what is the journey of this work, this information? Work information starts from execution in shape of work performance data. It goes to all controls of monitoring and control. It gets processed and gets converted into work performance information. All the work performance informations are put together, collected by monitor and control project work and further analyzed and consolidated into a work performance report. Are you with me on this? Do you understand how the data was converted into information and then into report?
Yes, sir. Work performance report.
Right. So it slowly started with the work performance data being generated from execution. Controls processed the work performance data, analyzed it, and converted it into work performance information. All the controls did output the work performance information. All the work performance informations are collected by monitor and control project work, which consolidates it into work performance report. Now, what else was done by controls? Control also suggested some change request. Many controls, every control in monitoring and control, or rather I would say every process in monitoring and control has the authority to move a change request. And we also received some change request from execution, which is shown here. When execution is sending data to monitoring and control, there was a change request also. So change request could be generated from execution or could be generated from any process within monitoring and control. Where do all these change requests go? One of the two processes of integration here, which I called the chief controller, is called perform integrated change control. Perform integrated change control actually receives all the change requests and is responsible to process them, whether they are accepted or rejected. Now we are not talking about the story who actually approves them, but we are just saying that integrated change control process is responsible for getting it approved or rejected or whatever. If you want to go into the detail, this is the project board which actually approves or rejects. But this thing happens under integrated change control. So if there is a change, the project management plan can be amended. Project documents can also be amended. The change requests which have been approved will be sent back to execution. Now the project documents have been updated and project management plan has also been updated. So approved change request information is also received. So all the subsequent work of execution would now follow the amended or updated project management plan and amended or updated project documents. So automatically everything will fall in place. So approved change requests are going from monitoring and control to execution. There are two other things going. One is the work performance report, the lowest one, and you understand from where this work performance report was created. It was created by monitor and control project work when it consolidated the work performance informations. And why is it required? It is required specially by human resource, as if they can write reports of their people or they can advise their people to work harder or whatever. They can reward their people, they can punish their people, whatever treatment is to be meted to the people, to the human resource is based on this work performance report. But this work performance report is not a human personal report. This is the work report. Like the construction of wall was not good. So who was responsible for construction of wall? Whomsoever was responsible, apportioning the blame is not the responsibility of monitoring and control. It is the responsibility of the manager who is managing those people, the supervisor under whom those people were working. He will identify who is responsible for that and who should be punished. And the third thing which is going from monitoring and control to execution is called quality control measurements. Now this is very important. You must listen to it very carefully. What are quality control measurements and why are they being sent to execution? You remember we had in planning quality management plan and process improvement plan prepared, which was part of the project management plan. Later in execution, we had a process, quality assurance, which was responsible for ongoing processes audit. It was auditing on all ongoing processes. So when the processes are happening, this quality assurance is the only process allowed to interact with those processes and fix any problems. So how does it improve these processes? Naturally, through audits, through looking at their processes, whatever they, what are they doing, whatever they are doing, is it written somewhere? Are they following some process? If they are not following the process, then they have to be trained to follow the process. If there are no processes at all, the processes have to be created and they have to be written down, documented. And if there are any bugs in the system, they have to be identified. So this all is the job of quality assurance. But quality assurance can find as much as his eyes can see. There are so many other things. There are so many other problems with the system which are not visible to the quality assurance person. No matter how honestly this quality assurance person works, but there will be many things still hidden from his eyes. Now let us discuss what does the quality control do in monitoring and control. Quality control is responsible for inspecting the deliverables. If there is something wrong with the deliverable, there must be something wrong with the process. So That is one of the reasons why all the quality control measurements which is carried out in quality control are sent back to execution. This gives ears and eyes to the execution or to the quality assurance, and that would know that this kind of error is occurring in the product. Therefore, I must check the process at a specific place. And he would then be able to identify the problem very directly rather than going in a hit and trial manner. He would be able to home on to the problem and fix it. Although quality assurance was working without even this input of quality control measurements, but with quality control measurements, his vision has been broadened. He can home on to the problem. He can improve the process quickly and easily. So you see, this is a kind of a cycle. The items going from execution to monitoring and control, and the items coming back from monitoring and control to execution. The items will come back to execution only if there is a repetition. If there is a change request approved, that will reach the execution. If there are quality control measurements, they will reach execution. If there are performance reports, they will reach execution. What if there is no more change requests? That means everything is going fine. There are no more quality control measurements. That means all the quality standards have been met and the deliverable is done. There are no more performance reports. That means all the performance reports have been completed and the project is done. As soon as nothing is to be transmitted back to the execution, this connection is broken. And therefore, monitoring and control is now sure that project is done. And now, monitoring and control hands over the accepted deliverable and the procurement and documentation to closing process group as if it can do the closing audit and check whether all the documents are present to show that all the deliverables have been delivered and all the work has been done, all the contracts have been closed, and there is nothing outstanding. If that is proven, closing will hand over the final product to the customer, and everything else in shape of documents or assets will be handed over back to the organization. It will add to the organizational process assets, and by that time the project will cease to exist. There will be no assets on project charge, no people, no work, no deliverables. Everything is gone. Project is finished. This is the story of the interaction of all the 5 process groups. Although we did not go into the detail of each process, but once you understand this much, it will be very easy for you to understand the ingredient processes in detail. So how is it? Is it fine with you?
Sir, today it was a bit confusing. And
Okay.
go through this video again tomorrow, inshallah, and hopefully it'll be
I can explain it again whenever you feel like.
clear.
There is no problem, absolutely. But wherever you have confusion, please write it down, and maybe you can write it down in form of a question and email me, and I will explain it the first thing in the next lecture.
Yes, sir. I will go through it, inshallah, before the tomorrow's lecture, and if there's something, I'll definitely ask.
You see, today's lecture is extremely important because uh, whatever we are going to be studying after this would be dependent on this. This knowledge is applied in all the remaining 10 chapters. Exactly this knowledge. Each and everything, each and every input and output must be crystal clear to you. I do not ask you to remember these things by heart at all. I just want you to understand it, clarify it as a concept, and then it will never leave your mind. Then you would be perfectly aligned with it. So that is exactly what I want from you. Right. Let me move on and see what else we have there in this. I think we have come to the end of this chapter. Okay. Right. These are the ingredient processes. Let me go through them very quickly, and naturally we will talk about each knowledge area later. But first of all, initiation process group. If you have listened to the previous two lectures, you would know that in initiation, we only have two processes. One is called the project charter, develop project charter, and other is the identify stakeholders. Now, this project charter actually belongs to the integration knowledge area, whereas identify stakeholder belong to stakeholder management knowledge area. As I said, integration is always the parent, but there is always a process in every process group for integration. It is a must. No other knowledge area has existence in every process group. Some have existence in 4 process groups, some in 3, some in 2, but integration is present in all the 5 process groups, and it serves to integrate whatever is being done in every process group. So in this process group, the major processes, the integration processes, develop project charter, and as I defined to you, developed by the project sponsor, given to the project manager. After project manager gets this, he identifies the stakeholders. This is exactly what I decided. So this circle shown around integration and the project charter means that this is the parent group. This is the central thing, and everything else here is integrating with it, interacting with it. Then we have the planning process group. In planning process group, this is the most populated process group, most heaviest one. Out of the 47 processes, we have 24 processes here. And each group of processes for each knowledge area is separately shown on a background. A background box, like in case of scope. In case of scope, we have got 4 processes in planning. First, we develop the scope management plan, then we collect the requirements, then we define the scope, then we create the WBS. In time, we have first process will always be to create the management plan. The first process is plan schedule management, define activities, sequence activities, estimate resources, estimate durations, develop schedule. And the interaction is also shown that schedule management plan is needed by all the processes. This interacts with everyone. Define activities interact with estimate resource activity resources. Anyways, cost has got 3 processes. These are the heavier processes, and then risk also has a number of processes. It has got 5 processes. Whereas procurement, communication, stakeholder, human resource, and quality all have a single process each. Integration also has a single process, but integration process, which is develop project management plan, is the parent of them all. All the processes are subordinated to integration management. Now, as I was explaining earlier, in planning of any knowledge area during this planning process group. First thing you need to do is to create a management plan, which will not be the detailed plan, but the plan about the plan. It is how to manage the plan, how the plan will be made, who is responsible for doing what, how the things will be done in the planning. So if I am talking about, say, schedule management plan, it will tell me how to define the activities, how to sequence the activities, how to do the estimation of resources and duration, and how to develop a schedule. But when I am creating these instructions, I do not know the activities, because activities will be identified in a subsequent process based on the instructions given by the schedule management plan. So schedule management plans are instructions, and based on those instructions I will exactly follow these processes and create some outputs from there. Those outputs may be fed into input to as input to the subsequent process, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, develop schedule is the process where all these outputs are put together in form of a schedule, a Gantt chart, a bar chart. And it is not final, because this bar chart may be affected by scope, by cost, or by any other knowledge area. So after accepting impact from all other knowledge areas, we will finally, when we think that this is the final plan, project manager must get it baseline, get it frozen in time. But if he freezes it himself, then probably anybody will force him to change it. So what he does is, he gets it signed and approved by his boss, the project sponsor. Once project sponsor has baselined the schedule, then nobody can change it without a formal change request, procedure, and the permission of project sponsor. So project manager even does not have any authority in changing what has been baseline. So we have got only three baselines: scope baseline, schedule baseline, and cost baseline. Why? Because I defined and explained earlier today that scope, time, and cost are three project objectives. Why? Because objectives of a project can be defined in terms of scope, time, and cost. Remaining other knowledge areas are actually anything we design for quality will actually be impacting any one of these three objectives. Whatever I have got shortage of resources, human resources, that would be impacting my cost or time or scope. So anything happening anywhere else would be impacting these three things, and most of all, the time management. So these three baselines are important. I do not create any baseline for any other plan. But I do have management plans everywhere. And those management plans and these three baselines are put together into this project management plan. So ingredients of the project management plan are all the management plans and all the baselines. How many baselines are there? Three: scope, time, and cost. How many management plans are there? Naturally, with exception of the project management plan, we have got 9 knowledge areas: scope, time, cost, quality, human resource, stakeholder communication, risk, and procurement. So at least one management plan is coming from everywhere. Scope management plan, schedule management plan, cost management plan, quality management plan. So from everywhere there is one management plan coming. But there are two knowledge areas which give us not one but two management plans. Scope gives us the scope management plan as well as the requirements management plan. Quality gives us the quality management plan as well as the process improvement plan. So with addition of these two additional plans, we have a minimum requirement of 11 management plans and 3 baselines to come up with our project management plan. But there could be more management plans, and I will discuss why and how. There could be a change management plan, there could be a configuration management plan, and there could be any other kinds of plans. This is basically, we are talking from the generic perspective of PMI. Therefore, these are the minimum requirement of the plans. If you are doing construction engineering, in construction engineering, they have got not 10 knowledge areas, but 13 knowledge areas. So there will be a security management plan, an environment management plan, and a financial management plan. So you see, there could be more management plans. But the minimum requirement is these 11 management plans and 3 baselines. This is what your project management plan is. I will not like to move ahead from here. We will discuss execution tomorrow. And if you have any questions, please ask. G. Mohsen?
Yes, sir. It's fine, sir.
Very fine. And
And tomorrow I can, discuss it further if there is anything.
exactly. Um, I know Rijo and Asad, I probably can't hear you, maybe due to the connection, but you can write in chat if it is okay with you. I know you joined late and you might have missed a lot. I will very strongly recommend that you go through the recording and then ask questions tomorrow, because I will only be able to clarify your concepts if you show me your doubts. So please confirm it is okay.
Yes, sir, for sure. From my side, it's okay, sir.
Okay. Asad? Okay. And Rijo? Okay, wonderful. So we are meeting tomorrow, and today's lecture was very important. If you want to listen to it more than once, you're most welcome. This is very important. Each and every word I have spoken that defines the whole concept, and you must not miss anything out of it. So let us meet tomorrow, and then I'll ask some questions in the beginning, like I did today, and I'll clarify if you have understood the previous lecture, and then we can move ahead with the subsequent. We will be able to complete this chapter tomorrow. Okay, if there is nothing else, thank you. Yes?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Good night, sir.